Good morning. This is Just Be Well, the channel about whole life wellness. I'm dr.sult, a medical doctor and functional medicine practitioner.
I'm Elizabeth, a registered nurse and whole life coach.
And as soon as we set up and started to record, the neighbor decided it was time to mow his lawn. So hopefully there's not too much of that noise in the background.
Yeah, let us know if you're having a hard time hearing us too, because when we went to set up, we got our usual mics and it didn't turn on. So we're using different mics too.
Yeah. So
this all really goes with our discussion today.
It does. It definitely goes with our discussion today. So we have been working through our, so I just noticed you're watching. If you could let us know in the comments, can you hear us? Because we have, we had a little, hi friend, can you hear us?
Because we sound okay?
Yeah, we had a little issue with our audio this morning, and so I've rigged up a new approach. So before we go too far, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Anyway, we have been talking about our...
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, Fran. We have been talking about our Rebalance to Heal program for this past several weeks. And the Rebalance to Heal is really about rebalancing your limbic system, which is this switchboard deep in your brain. And the switchboard controls your immune system and your hormones and your circadian rhythms. And that's why people with chronic illness often can't sleep well. They want to sleep all day and be awake all night. Their circadian rhythms get all flipped. It controls really everything because it's the basic switchboard at the base of your brain. And when those switches get stuck, you know, it tends to cause pro-inflammation, poor detoxification, hormone dysregulation, everything not inducive to healing. So we started where? Way back when?
The first week we talked about 3 supplements. 3
supplements. So we talked about supplements. Well, Ann, watching from work.
Hi, Ann.
Thank you. That's so kind. So we talked about 3 supplements, and those supplements are basically designed to calm your limbic system in a very gentle way, so that you can attend to the rest of the program. And then we talked about this device called an M-Wave. And an M-Wave is a biofeedback device that just trains you to know if you're really in a meditative state or not. You know, many meditators struggle for months or even years to even have an inkling, gee, am I doing this right? And so we can just shave off all of that time and annoyance. What do you think of the M-Wave?
I thought the M-Wave was great because there are times where, you know, I'm sure that I'm in a, you know, nice, calm, relaxed state, and then I look and actually I'm in the red. So, you know, it's really given me some insight into what that actually feels like or what it actually entails, and really it entails letting go and thinking and doing nothing. You know, not striving to think about nothing. It's just about
embracing gratitude, embracing love, simply being.
So, yeah.
And then we talked about sort of our ritual, or we call it the morning ritual, but we actually do it twice a day, so it's morning and evening ritual. And that is just a way of sort of grounding yourself and allowing your subconscious mind to come to the present and journal on that a little bit, and so on. And we've talked about that extensively. And then we skipped this part because we have a ton of information about it. But then we talk about, did I miss one? We talk about, what did I miss?
You missed just the grounding, the sensory kit. That was before journaling. We had one whole week just on sensory immersion.
Okay, I thought that came after the 5 modifiable lifestyle factors, but okay. So I got it wrong. So good, thank you. Tell us about the
Maybe.
sensory kit. Doesn't matter. Tell us about the sensory
Yeah,
kit.
I just think we have that in the journaling messed up. But whatever, they're all in there somewhere.
Well, the journaling is part of the
Yeah.
morning ritual.
Right. Yes, exactly. So the sensory immersion kit is really just about kind of helping you with, what are you laughing at?
These two birds playing
Yeah,
over
I
here.
know. They've been distracting me too. They're playing in the tree next to us.
Yeah.
The sensory immersion kit is really just about tools that help to bring you into the present moment, so to ground you. And really being present isn't it about immersing yourself in, your present life, the state of your life? Because a lot of us, we're going through difficult things, and you're like, you want me to be present with here and now? And that's not what it's about. Being present is being present. Being present is not thinking. It's not having all those emotionally driven thoughts or feelings. It's just about being. And really, when you tap into your five senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling, it can take you away from kind of that emotional based space of being into more of just a peaceful sense of being.
Never leave this sacred moment, right? The problem is it's never leave this. Oh wait, just went by. Never this one. This one. Okay, maybe I'll think about that one. Well, no, don't think about that one or that one. Think about this one. But this one is in flow. Never leave this sacred moment. Never leave this sacred present, maybe, is the way to think about it. So that's kind of, and then we didn't talk about it, but we have this idea of the 5 modifiable lifestyle factors, and that's really the foundation of any wellness program, so that has to be included in this. But most people who are really in limbic stress aren't ready for that, so we put it deeper into the program. And then the 6th area is what we call insight trainings. And insight trainings are a meditative practice based in Rinzai Zen training. It's an adoption of that by an American, the first American to be graduated from the Rinzai Zen training mastery, actually in Japan, in a monastery, doing all the crazy things they do. But he adopted it for Western culture because there are parts of Zen that somebody who didn't grow up in Japanese or Chinese culture will just never understand. It's just not part of our lexicon. But what is the human experience. And so there are these 13 specific insight trainings. And the reason for it, I made a little graphic here that I'll try to show you. So here's my graphic. And there is emotional development along this axis here, and there's spiritual development along this axis here. And the idea is to do this. Some people do this, right? And if you do this, you're still really in the domain of ego as master. We want to get up here into ego as servant. And if you think about it, above this line, you have good emotional intelligence, and beyond this line you have good spiritual intelligence, and we want both. And so, over here is good emotional development, so you have sort of personal actualization. Over here you have both, so you have transpersonal actualization and the opportunity for what we call true transcendence, where this is kind of a false transcendence. A lot of people live here, including me.
Or here.
or here. So if your life is filled with drama, everybody's...
check yourself.
Yeah, check yourself.
Which
because
box are you in?
Yeah, which box? Because if you're living in a world filled with this chaotic drama, you're down here. And it's okay. Awareness is the most powerful tool. So if your world is filled with drama, you really you haven't developed an adequate amount of emotional intelligence to deal with the chaos of your life. John Kabat-Zinn has a book entitled Full Catastrophe Living. And the whole idea of this is not, I would say, this is embracing the full catastrophe of your life over here. This is denying parts of your catastrophe, because we all have this rich emotional life. And unfortunately, if you don't have the emotional intelligence to manage that and understand that, then you're going to live in that chaos. You're going to live in that drama. So the first of these insights, we're going to just go through the insights, hopefully all of them today. There's 13 of them. And then we'll come back in the next and kind of go into each of them in a little more depth over the next couple of discussions. But the first thing is, what is the insight? So I have a bunch of information here about how to actually sit and meditate and stuff like that. But the first insight is to distinguish between a pure sensory experience, and in this case we use hearing, a pure sensory experience versus your evaluation, valuation, and judgment of that experience.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of what I was talking about with the sensory
Absolutely.
immersion.
Yep. They all, one builds on the
thing.
other.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. So the idea is find a sound, preferably a pleasant sound.
Not a lawnmower.
not a lawnmower. And just listen to it and try to really distinguish and be aware of your evaluation of that sound, your valuation of that sound, and your judgment of that sound. And try to distinguish that and let that go and simply experience it. This takes training. It's hard. So maybe a little Tibetan singing bowl, maybe a little school bell, maybe one of those little dingers that sits on a cabinet, maybe just any bowl in your cabinet that you can hit and it makes a resonant sound. Any of those things will work. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Hit it and simply listen. So this works best if you use your M wave and you get into that deep, heart-centered breathing space, and then you hit that bell. Preferably even if somebody else could hit the bell so you don't have to interrupt yourself. And just try to separate out the experience from the judgment. And practice. And practice.
And you can find these things on like YouTube as well.
Yep.
If you just want to play something.
Yep. If you just want to play the sound of a bell ringing, yeah, absolutely. That's great. You can do that.
Or maybe it is like a dog barking or a lawnmower.
Well, eventually it is. Eventually it is.
That is true. You probably don't want to do that on your first date because you're like,
so eventually,
I'm done with this.
Eventually it's the most annoying sound, and you're letting go of why it's annoying you. You're letting go of the judgment and the the evaluation and the valuation. It's a low value sound because it's annoying me. No, it's just a sound, and we're simply going to experience it. So that's the first insight, is trying to really get a handle on the difference between a sensory experience and a judgment.
And a lot of us think we are in the present and we are having that sensory experience, but we don't realize how much we actually judge the present moment.
Right.
And have these feelings of, no, it should be this way instead of the way it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, Christina.
The second insight we call embodied listening. So what does that mean? That means you hear this sound. Where do you hear it? Do you hear it just with your ears? Where do you hear it? When you're really deep, when you're really in that heart breath space where you get to when you're using your M wave, where are you hearing this? And for most people, the chest is a resonant cavity. And for most people, they will say they hear the sound or they feel the sound in their chest. And think about having been to a really loud concert. Boom, boom, boom. You feel that in your chest, right? So this embodied listening, where do you feel this? Where do you embody this sound? And if it's not your heart chest area, you need to spend more time with the sound. You need to spend more time with your M wave. You need to spend more time getting in that deep heart-centered space. And so part of this is distinguishing the judgment from the sound, and part of it is a training that requires you to get into this deep heart-centered space, this coherence, as they say in heart math, with the M wave. So that's the second koan, embodied listening, trying to really physically own the sound. So we hear the sound intellectually, but can we embody the sound?
Do you feel it?
You feel it. The next is really then taking the meditation practice even deeper. So we've heard the sound, we've tried to remove judgments from the sound, we've embodied the sound. Now, if it's not the ego and all the valuation, evaluation, and judgment about the sound, if it's something underneath that ego, what's listening? Who is listening? Who are you underneath your ego? Right? Who are you underneath your ego? So who am I in this deep, heartfelt space? When I'm really connected to my breath and my heart, and I've eliminated judgment and evaluation and valuation, who am I? So what does that mean? Who are you?
So trying to answer that question without judgment is hard.
Yeah, that's right.
Because, who am I? Well, do I want to put myself into a classification or, and I think it just comes down to, I think at our core, I think we're love.
Yeah.
So it's just embodying that sense of love. And I think it's
goes back
the
to
same
that.
in all of us. We're all love.
Yeah. It goes back to our previous
Try not
discussion.
to let my tree hugging side come out too much, but we're all love.
Well, I don't think that's tree hugging. I think it's just true.
Yeah.
We,
It is true.
We
It is
are
very true.
all one on several levels. So the question becomes back to the morning ritual where we ask the question, what is my essence? Mm-hmm. And this comes back to that. What is my essence? Compassion, love, kindness. Those are the kinds of things that come up. Now, it also is true that we are one, both literally, physically, and spiritually. Every spiritual tradition would have, would say that, whether it's human hands or the hands of God on earth, or we are all part of God consciousness, or we are all part of the Godhead, we are all part of the body of Christ. There's every religious tradition will have some kind of a phrase similar to that. But in quantum physics, according to unified field theory, which isn't proven because it's out there at the cutting edge of science, but it's the current best guess, every single electron in the universe is part of one continuous field. And that is how non-local events happen, right? Einstein's spooky action at a distance, where information seems to transfer from one entangled entity to the next at speeds greater than the speed of light, which can't happen. So how can this thing that can't happen? Because it's not traveling, it's all part of one thing. And everything in the universe is made out of a couple of different kind of quarks, and electrons, and a couple of other forces. So there's like 9 things that make everything in the universe. And each of those 9 things is part of one continuous field. Mm-hmm. So it's literally true, it's figuratively true, it's true in any way you think about it, that we are all one. And these are, by the way, in Zen, these are called koans. This particular koan, the third insight training, is about trying to get some sort of sense of that and just an inkling. So the beauty and the power of this process is people, for centuries, people have sat on a mountaintop and tried to meditate themselves to enlightenment, right? Well, this is a path. This gives you tiny little glimpses of what enlightenment, what transcendence is. And then you build those, and you build those, and you build those. So this third insight, who am I at this deep, heartfelt space? Well, we're one. So one would be an answer. Beauty would be another. But not a word from the space of ego and evaluation. Not what you want to be. It's what you actually experience. Mm-hmm. And that's the important thing with all of this. It's the experience. You can understand it. It's useless. You have to experience it. Mm-hmm. I often tell patients, you might understand it, but you don't understand it. You understand it with your brain, but not with your heart. You understand it intellectually, but not emotionally, right? You have to experience it. And I should turn these this way so that we have a chance of getting these back together. Okay. 4. Okay, the fourth. Mm-hmm. So the fourth then tries to take you deeper into this space of non-evaluation, the space below the ego. And it asks you to meditate on the question, differentiate between not knowing and I don't know. So I don't know is really a conversation of the ego. Not knowing is equivalent to letting go. One of the things that is common in Mondo Zen is people will say, well, what do you mean let go? I don't know what let go means. Well, which word is it that you don't understand? Let or go, mm-hmm. Right? Let go. It's back to that place that you were talking about when you're trying to get from red to green. Mm-hmm. It's just being. Mm-hmm. So not knowing simply means I'm simply being. Not knowing is I have let go of evaluation, valuation, and judgment. Mm-hmm. I know it seems weird, but it's all tangled together. I mean, the concepts, what gets you to green on your M wave, gets you to this place on our fourth mm-hmm. insight koan. Right? So it's doing this. It's like a tumbleweed, right? The tumbleweed is moving forward, but it's moving forward by continuously contacting the same spots, right? It's rolling, and this is rolling us in this direction of this high level of emotional and spiritual insight. Then again, we're just scratching the surface, and we're going to come back to these. But the fifth insight, at this level of deep heart, brain clarity, at this deep level of consciousness, what am I like? Not what arises in this state, but what are you truly like? What is a description of you? So that essence, right? That essence that we talked about in the morning ritual, that place below the ego, we ask, what does it feel like? But now we're asking, what are you like? So again, it's an attempt to continue to deepen our meditative practice and our understanding. So from the vantage point of this clear, deep heart mind, this deep place of egoless meditation, many people describe bliss or universal love or holy bliss or this idea of universal connection. So it's really trying to get us to that deep meditative place where we see these universal connections.
Gene, it's a song, Let It Go. It is a song.
It is a song,
great
Let It
song.
Go. It's a great song, even if it is a Disney movie.
Oh, it's a great Disney movie.
It is. So that's the fifth insight, and it really, this is, again, it's like a tumbleweed rolling, right? The tumbleweed is light and airy, and so light and airy that just a breeze pushes it along, and we're trying to get to that light, airy, breezy place. So then the idea here is it's a progression. We experienced it, then we described it, we experienced it, we embodied it, the embodied hearing and the embodied senses. Part of the practice is once you do the hearing experience, you start to do sight experiences and taste experiences, and you try to get all of your senses in tune with the pure non-evaluative, valuative, judgmental aspects of the pure experience. So we do that, then we embody it, but then we name it, and that allows us to claim it. So part of the fifth insight is the foundation for the idea that I know who I am. I am this essence. I am this spirit. I like to say that my spirit doesn't live within me. I live within my spirit. My spirit is more who I am. This body and this mind is just the ego entanglement that creates all of the chaos in the world, right? My essence, my spirit, I can name that. And at first, you probably name it something like, bliss or love or something, but eventually you want it to be your name. You want yourself to be Tom Sult. What does Tom Sult mean? It means that deep heart-brain place. It means that heartfelt center of essence. And by doing that, then when chaos starts to reign, you can call forth to that. You can say, wait a minute, I own this space called Tom Sult. It's not this body right here, this thing. It's the universal connectedness, and I'm just this little wrinkle in the universe that's a part of this massive truth, right? That's who I am. And if I can call that forth at will, and that takes a lot of practice, but if I can call that forth at will, that becomes transcendence. So that's what that koan is about. The sixth koan, which is really an extension of the fifth koan, and I kind of already talked about it, and that's really by embodying it and owning it and naming it, you can call it forth. Right? So that's just more insight into the sixth training. The sixth training is, these things are sticking together, is really to be able to embody and call it forth at will, which I can't do. But I try, and all of us try, right? We just try. And eventually you get so good at it that there's only milliseconds of not doing it. And then eventually, it just shrinks and shrinks, and pretty soon, instead of having that instantaneous emotional response, you have a deeper clarity about your emotion, which we're going to get to.
Right, and like Jane said, she said, being simple, it's that easy, just the letting go. And this
it's that simple. I'm not sure it's easy.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
And,
it's just not
and
easy.
it depends on, the situation. I like to think of this as like, okay, so long division. You can use your calculator and get right to the answer on some questions, but on some you have to know how to do the long division to know how you came to your answer. So I feel like this is helpful in just, especially, there's times where you can just let it go and it's great, and you can, find that place of, just being in a few moments. And then there's times where you just can't, and that's where I think these steps really come in handy to kind of help you, peel back that onion.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all it is. It's a path, right? You call it peeling in an onion, call it a path, call it whatever. It's just a way. It's not the way, it's a way. You know, another way is to go sit in a cave and meditate for 40 years. Another way is to run, you know, long distances or do epic journeys. I mean, you know.
Yeah, or maybe you have your own practices that can bring you to that place.
Yeah, and that's fine. This is just a path, and it's the path that we've put together. And then the seventh insight, I kind of jumbled up the fifth, sixth, and seventh insight, because again, the seventh insight, is really taking this understanding, these glimpses of enlightenment, of transcendence, and owning them, and naming them, and practicing calling them forth. So that's the seventh. The eighth, this is an interesting one. Does this place of transcendence, does this feeling of connection, does this thing we call clear, deep heart mind, does it come and go? Does it come and go? No. Our ego,
distractions.
There's distractions and our ego screens it from us.
Yeah, we live a very distracted life, or things that we learn along our life can kind of cloud this out.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's all about unlearning.
It's all about unlearning. It's all about simplifying, simplifying and getting clear. Now, why is it important? And the question is, in fact, the ninth insight is really, how do you know? How do you know the deep, clear heart, mind doesn't come and go? And the answer is because you've experienced it, right? If you have gotten to a point where you have removed evaluation from your sensory experiences, embodied it, named it, and practiced calling it forth at will, and had even meager success at calling it forth at will, you know it's always there. And if it's always there, it's your experience of it always being there. And so the answer to the ninth insight training is, how do you know? How can you be certain? Because you've experienced it. And that's why I said before, you can't just know. You have to know. You have to experience it. You have to embody it. So the ninth training, how can you be certain? Because you've experienced it. And that's why you have to go through this process. So once that has happened, the 10th insight, what feelings arise when you experience the understanding that this level of insight is continuously present, and the only thing keeping us from this insight is our egoic evaluations and the distractions of our modern world and all that kind of thing. What sensations arise in you? And again, it goes back to what we've already discussed. For most people, they're going to describe some kind of holy bliss, right? That's called beatific. Beatific is holy bliss. And for most people, it's going to be this infinite space. So I named it, for me, a beatific abyss. Because an abyss is a dimensionless space, right? But you can name it whatever you want. But have a sense of what is it? You know, what this idea of transcendence or enlightenment, and how do you feel there? You feel bliss. You feel holiness. You feel connection. You feel community. You feel love. You feel compassion.
And I think we can all probably think back to points in our life where we've tapped into that, where we've been there. Maybe it's a certain experience.
First time you looked at your child.
Yeah, your child.
Even when they were being a little shit. Then they go to sleep and you look at them and you go, oh, how angelic.
Falling in love, like all the good hormones that come along with that. And also for me, it's happened anytime I've gone to like a Christian concert. Like there's something that I tap into that is just euphoric. So yeah, I think that we can all tap it. You know, we can all kind of relate to that feeling, like we've had it, you know, and it's just bringing that forth in your own space.
Yep. Absolutely well said.
by yourself. Not needing the extra.
Not needing the externals, not needing somebody else to affirm or support you. It's nice to be supported. We're not saying you don't need support, you shouldn't have support. We're saying that it starts in here. The 11th insight training is the beginning of what we call the emotional koans. So all of these others were really kind of insight koans, where we're trying to really understand the difference between our evaluative ego mind and the non-judgmental space of essence, of spirit, of soul, whatever you want to call it. The 11th insight is easy to misunderstand. So I want to take a little bit of time. So the question of the koan is, has anyone ever made you angry, shamed you, or caused you to turn away? Now, clearly you've been angry and you've felt shame and you've turned away. But did somebody truly cause that in you, or was that a choice of an expression?
Is anger a choice of expression? I suppose how you express your anger is a choice, but is feeling...
But the question here is caused you to.
Caused you to feel angry.
Has someone else caused you to? And it's hard because we're so caught up in, you made me mad. Well, why did I get mad? I got mad. I only get mad about things that I care about. I care. That's why I'm mad. If something is happening that's making me mad, maybe I'm fearful. Why am I fearful? I'm fearful because I care about the outcome. If I care about the outcome, is blowing up and pointing and yelling and accusing going to get me where I want to go? Or is there some other way to express caring that will get me where I want to go? So it's not a denial of your emotions. And that goes back to your concern about this 11th koan is, well, do you get mad? Of course you get mad.
Right. Things can trigger anger,
Yep.
Somebody rear ends you, or maybe, somebody does something horrible to a family member. There's a triggered response of anger, but you are in control with what you do with that anger and really evaluating why you're angry, I suppose.
Yeah. So evaluating the emotion. So when anger wells up, the first question, this question is simply asking you to think about, what does it mean to have an emotion? So I'm having this emotional response. What does it mean? Why am I angry? What is causing me to be angry? Well, one superficial level of, I'm angry because you're an asshole, right? I'm angry because you're an asshole. Okay, but wait a second. What is it that person is doing, and what is it triggering in me? I'm angry because you're pointing a gun at me. Well, that's a pretty good reason to be angry, right? So I'm fearful. But also, I might be angry because you're pointing something out about me that I don't like. And I was trying to hide that. So I'm angry because you're a mirror of me. And you're making me see my own shit, and I don't like my own shit. I don't like my stuff. I don't like my baggage. I don't want to deal with my baggage. Or it's something else, right? But whatever it is, if I'm angry about it, it means I care. It means it matters. And so what can I do? That's not this koan. This koan is just recognizing it. So this koan is, has anybody ever really made you violent? No. Violence is a choice. It's a conditioned response to anger and fear. And if you think about any strong emotional response, it almost always has to do with fear or anger or something along those lines, right? So that's the 11th koan, is really trying to recognize that.
Right.
You were about to say something.
No, when this has come up in the past, all this is new for me. I haven't done this type of Zen training in particular. So, I'm learning just like everyone else. But when this comes up, I always, there's part of me that's like, well, wait a minute, you want me to suppress my anger? Because I'm finally getting to the point in my life where, before it was like, if I was angry about something and I actually told you, I've probably been mounting and sitting on that anger for months, if not years. So now I finally gotten to a point where I can use my voice and speak things. So then for me, I feel this defense rising in myself. But what do you mean you don't want me to be angry and deal with my anger? Like, I've just learned how to do that.
Well, but the point is, we want you to deal with your anger in the most effective way.
Right, which suppressing it isn't, and obviously being violent isn't, but talking about it and doing things.
Yeah, so I'm angry. And I realize that it's anger about something I care about, and I think about what is it I care about and what was challenged there that made me feel the anger, and now I can talk about that very thing instead of storing it and suppressing it and pushing it down until I detonate. So it's a more effective way to deal with your anger. It's not denying your anger. It's not denying any emotion. It's a much more effective way to manage and mitigate the reason why you're angry, right? And that's the difference. So I wanted to show you, I got a couple of diagrams here, but I want to show you this bottom one a little bit. I got to look at it a little bit more closely. Yeah, so right here is love. And these are emotions getting deeper. So on the green, we've got acceptance, trust, and then admiration. And in the yellow, it's serenity, joy, and ecstasy. And where ecstasy, where is it here? Where ecstasy, where these two meet, love is born, right? These are deepening levels of love. You could say that, this level of love is brotherly love, and this is family love, and this is romantic love, or something. It's not perfect, but it's an idea that our emotions combine to cause other emotions. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. This is another graphic about emotions, and here's the basic emotions, and here's all the subsets of these various emotions, and the secondary subsets. So there's a rich emotional life, but especially guys, our emotional thing is and pissed off, right? We're either or pissed off. Well, that's not a very rich emotional life. And once you get a greater vocabulary, there's this idea called theory of mind. Some really interesting research.
Just let you know we're at 45 minutes.
And we're on the 11th koan, so
got a few koans left.
Got a few koans left. We're going to keep going, and I apologize if it's too long, but we're going to keep going. And I'll leave the emotional stuff for when we talk about it in depth. I'm really excited about that stuff. This is like my passion project. Well, this whole thing is my passion project, but this in particular. Okay, now the 12th insight training is the next step from the 11th. And in the 11th, we recognize that these powerful emotions come from some other deep-seated concern. So the 12th insight is silently, through your eyes and your body, demonstrate that intense clarity that always arises just before you choose a negative emotional reaction. So what does that look like? Just before. How many times have you gone like, right? You go, oh, I'm so mad. Oh, I'm so mad. Or, oh, I'm so afraid. That is the clarity. That's the thing. Just not the embodiment necessarily, but that's welling up in you. And then that embodiment is, again, the next step. First, we intellectually understood it. We thought about it. We got an emotional understanding of it. Now we're embodying it in the 12th insight koan.
And it's weird. Once you said the word fear, things kind of clicked into place for me a little bit more because I'm more of a fearful person. I'm not really an angry person. It takes me a lot to get angry. Sometimes I have to almost push myself. Okay, Elizabeth, this should piss you off. Get mad.
I must really be good at.
But I'm more of a fearful person. So when he said fear, I was like, oh, I can relate to fear. So don't think that you have to relate to anger, because not all of us have
angry.
issues
Yeah.
with anger.
Right.
Some of us have issues with fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, some of us have issues of...
Well, right. So, exactly.
So just pick an emotion that you feel.
There's a whole bunch of emotions
Yes.
to choose from. If I have
Yeah.
it on the thing, a whole
So-
bunch of emotions to choose from.
Anger is just
Just one
an
of them.
example. And you know, it's weird that never clicked to me. All these conversations we've had about that, but it just clicked with me now. Like, oh, I can get this if I think about it in terms of fear.
The 13th and final insight training. Visualize yourself transforming a habitual negative emotional reaction. So we all have triggers, right? There's stuff that's in our past that just sets us off. We all have them. And visualize yourself the next, it's like, when that guy says that, I'm just going to ream him a new one. When that guy does that, I'm going to just punch his lights. When that happens, I'm just going to do this. Any one of those things, when it starts to boil up, or, preferably when you're in a meditative session and it comes up in your mind because you're practicing the 13th koan, visualize yourself working through, okay, fear. Boy, that really scared the shit out of me, and I'm feeling this way about it. What does that fear mean? Why am I having this fear? It's because I have this deep caring about this subject. So if I care deeply about this subject, what can I do other than ream that guy a new one or punch him in the face? Right? What can I do differently? Or shutting down.
Hide in my bedroom.
Or hide in my bedroom, or shutting down, or curling up, or stuff it inside. What can I do, because I really care about this, that will move me further down my path in my journey to whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish? It could be a mundane thing like get the shopping done or get the house cleaned. It could be part of your spiritual journey. But what can I do because of my deep caring that would facilitate my deep caring rather than be destructive? So that's the 13th insight. And we're going to do another couple weeks on this. We'll take 2 or 3 of them at a time and dive deeper into each of them, because this is really, all the other stuff is beautiful and really powerful, but this is transformative. This last step, well, we build to it. We build to this last step, and this last step of these 13 insights takes us on a journey to a deeper level of understanding, which frees us. All right, so we've used up far more than our allotted time, and we will see you next week, Thursday at 10 a.m. to go even deeper. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.